kicking off the day right now with Ben Hatke, our guest host for the hour. Ben, first of all, so cool to have you here. Thanks for being it.
So cool to be here.
Yeah. A guest host. You're with us for the hour. Did you know when you came in you're going to get thrown into the mix of our guest hosting duties?
I felt like I found out a little late.
Yeah.
My publicist emailed me and she said, "Oh, by the way, after we've made the schedule, would you like to guest host for a couple of segments?" And I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
And it's been fun so far.
Well, we have a fun hour planned with you.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your book here first. Your new book is Little Robot.
Yeah.
Beautiful book about a robot that's sort of lost off the side of a truck and is found by a friend, a new friend, a non-robot friend.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit first about how that came. You're Zeta the Space Girl. We're going to talk about some of your other stuff that everyone knows you about, but this new book is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah. Well, I started with the Zeta books. They were these big kind of sprawling space adventures. This is more of a set on Earth, kind of a love note to summer. And it's also about, instead of being a big sprawling adventure, it's very much focused on friendship, two characters navigating their first friendship. But Little Robot, the robot character himself came from me while I was working on these big sprawling adventures, while I was working on a picture book. In the meantime, I had gone back to something I'd loved as a young child, which is comic strips. I grew up liking, or really connecting with newspaper comics, right? And so one day, for no reason in particular, I drew a 5-panel strip about this little robot. No words, totally silent. He's walking along, and it was a strip really about how I felt that day. The first panel we have a robot, he's walking along, and then something, ping, falls off the back of him. And he turns and he looks, and it's one little nut, one little screw. And he looks at it, and it's on the ground, and he reaches down to pick it up, and he falls apart. It was like the one thing that was holding everything together, and he just falls apart. And I thought that was fun, and just completely unconsciously, with no plan in mind, I kept making these little robot comic strips. And they were very much just little examinations, each one was an idea. And the robot developed a personality. And I find that this is great, working with characters in a not very intense way, just playing with characters for a long time.
Were you publishing them anywhere, or were you doing
just
anything
online?
With them?
It was just for fun,
Yeah.
And it's like, and sometimes the best projects come from the sense of play,
yeah.
right? And it allows you, when you're playing, it allows you to develop something slowly with no obligations kind of crushing on you for this specific character. Meanwhile, I've got my obligations with Zeta and ending this trilogy. So the robot was kind of me letting off steam. And then the robot started whispering, I have this story of my own to tell. And it became this book, which is about a little robot and a very young girl. And they're both kind of navigating their first friendship, which is with each other. She finds this robot in the river, down by this river, in a soggy cardboard box. And she opens it up, and he's not been activated yet. It's brand new. And she pushes this switch, and it starts to unfold, and arms come out and legs kind of fold out, and he's this robot. And she runs to hide. She doesn't know exactly what's going on, and the robot takes this one shuddering step and just falls over, and it can't get up. And it's just brand new. It's a new, like, clean slate of a mind. And so she creeps towards it, and she helps it up, and she says, "That's it, one step at a time." And they take the first step together, and when she helps it take its first step, it's this moment where she becomes responsible for the robot. Right. And then their stories are bound together after that point. And so their relationship starts as very much like the robot doesn't know anything, so it's a little bit parent-child type of relationship. But the robot starts to learn quickly, and they become equals. And then it's about that. The emotional, the internal and external things that pull apart a first friendship like that over the course of this summer.
How much of those early panels that you were drawing, those early 5-panel comics, of that personality was developed then? How much of that is in this book now? And did it sort of arrive to you sort of fully formed, or was it really sort of developing as you went?
It was a long process. I feel like the thing that I took away most from those early comic strips was just the sense of how the robot moved, his gesture. He's a little bit of a nervous creature in his way, so he's like, his expressions, the way he moves, the way he acts. It's like shooting a short film with an actor and noticing what their strengths and weaknesses are. Yeah. And then being like, okay, I know you as a director now. Let's do a feature-length project. The other thing that was special about this book was after the Zeta books, I had done a picture book called Julia's House for Lost Creatures, which was a bit of a different format for me. And I took some of the things that I learned from there and applied it to Little Robot, particularly like connecting it visually to Zeta. The Zeta books that I started out with are space adventures.
Right.
So a lot of the locations,
A lot of action,
a lot of action, and a lot of the locations that we see are very much far flung from my imagination. Right. This is set in my own area, the Shenandoah Valley, where I live. So for this book, I spent a lot of time going out on walks and sketching locations from life. There's an old railroad bridge where we splash around in the creek. There's an old like 1960s Jeep that I found just like in at the edge of somebody's property, and I looked at it and had a little face of its own, and I looked at it and I said, that will probably find a way into this book. So I sat right there in the road and sketched it. And that panel in particular, I just scanned straight out of my sketchbook, made a few digital changes, and it's right there as I first.
That sort of wide openness to anything that might sort of catch your fancy and that makes its way into the book. That's sort of another way of thinking. That's sort of an openness to everything around you. Did you think when you were going on those walks that you were looking for inspiration for Little Robot?
Very much. And that's in the early phases of a story. I think that's very important. A project like this, a lot of actually all the projects that I've worked on to date have been different combinations of words and pictures, visual storytelling and prose storytelling, and the interplay between those two. And in the early phases of these projects, I have almost like two sides of a brain like working at the same time. One side would be plotting, and that's a text. That's purely me in the keyboard, and so I will really nail down the plot and the sequence of events before I start on finished art. Meanwhile, though, I have a sketchbook for every project, and the sketchbook is just pure freedom. Any weird idea I think of, because it doesn't necessarily have to go into the book or not, and it's developing a visual sense for the project. But so the goofiest stuff, I didn't know that Jeep was going to make it into the narrative.
Right.
But it was interesting to me at the time, and I just sat down and threw it in the sketchbook. So the sketchbook becomes very interesting on its own, and it's a little bit sad because then a lot of that material just sits at home, and I think, what should I do with that? But I share it with people online.
It's still up there. It's waiting. It's
still
waiting
there.
to present itself. The friendship is beautiful in Little Robot. The friendship of the robot and the girl. Mm-hmm. Where did your inspiration come from that girl? And I mean, do you have children of your own, or do you have, tell me like where you are in your own life in terms of relationships with those little.
Yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot of inspiration to draw from in that vein. We live, like I said, we live in the Shenandoah Valley in kind of this rambly farmhouse. I have 5 daughters of different ages, so I have a lot of kids of different ages.
What's the age group?
Everything from my eldest is going on 13, and my youngest is 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's a big family.
It's a big spread, and it's a big family.
Yeah.
But it means I have a lot of little personalities and little models to pull from. One of my daughters was 6 while I was drawing this book, and she's got a similar build to the little girl, so I had her pose for a few things. Yeah. I was like, here, squat down with this stick, and let me just get that really quick because I wanted to get that little kid squat just right. The same girl, Julia, she posed for I finished a goblin picture book, and there was one page of the goblin picture book was like, you've got to pose for the goblin too, because the goblin's a little guy, and she was very patient. There's a part where the goblin's hiding under his bed, and she let me like pile mattresses and blankets and stuff on top of her, and she was very patient while I took some pictures. And
very patient. It sounds like a blast, actually. I'm sure she was.
She loved it. So.
Pile stuff on top of a 6-year-old. They're in good shape. Yeah. So it's very different from Zeta.
It is.
So you have this fan base that's kind of come along, and they've found that, and you're managing that, and then you go in a slightly different direction. It's fun as an artist to be able to play. Talk to me about the sort of different fan bases that you developed with some of your different work.
Yeah, it seems like I'm all over the place right now in terms of age groups that I'm kind of writing toward, or I don't know. The books would maybe be marketed toward. This is definitely a very early reader. I wrote it and drew it specifically so that you could hopefully follow the entire narrative visually, and so for a very early reader, they can pick up a 130-page little graphic novel and read the whole book.
Yeah.
Yet the text will offer. It's not going to close them out. It's going to add like another layer of richness, hopefully, to the story. So there's that on the one end. I'm doing picture books, which are for read aloud. Those are a blast to make. My current project is another graphic novel series, a 2-book series. It's high adventure, but probably it's for older. It's knocking on the door of like YA.
Excellent.
And then after that is a prose book.
Oh wow! All right. Well,
so I've got all kinds of things going on.
We're just going to follow along, but in the meantime, you're going to be with us for the rest of the hour.
Yeah.
Really great to have you. We have Lev Grossman coming up. We've got lots of great stuff happening here. So we'll be back with you in just a minute.
Okay.
And look forward to stay with us when we come back. More of Ben Hatke, Lev Grossman. Thanks so much for being at BookCon 2015. Lots more to happen today.